Hello, I'm Miranda Benoit from Invenire. Today I'm joined by my colleague Patricia Wiklund, and we're talking about something called an AES, which is short for an agro-ecological symbiosis system. Patricia's been working on a project over in the Åland Islands in Finland with Orkla Snacks and Confectionery to create an AES system. And while that's a technical name, essentially this is about creating cleaner bioenergy utilising food waste and manure. So, welcome, Patricia. And can you start by telling us a bit more about how this system works?
Yeah, sure. I think the name is always even difficult to say, but
Yes.
in reality, it's not that complicated. It's more about several players coming together and thinking about how they can cycle nutrients and energy, and they sort of create a model where they can be quite adaptive and resilient in their food production and consumption. And the other thing with the AES is that it has to be local, so the players have to be close to each other because of the logistics. But in short, it's about collaborating so that you gain benefits from helping each other out when it comes to nutrients and energy.
That's great, Patricia. And could you, just to help our audience listening, could you outline briefly for us what are the inputs and materials that are utilised to actually create the bioenergy?
Yeah, well, in this case, because it can vary, it depends on which context you're in. But in this case, it's about a food production unit, quite a big one, a factory that is processing a lot of potatoes, and they have their own biogas plant there, and the need for all of this came from that plant needed a more diverse feed, and that's how the collaboration came about with some dairy farmers, because the manure from the cows is quite useful in a biogas production, and you get much more out of the whole biogas process by adding the manure. So from going from sort of one vegetable feed into the biogas plant, you versatile it, and you get different feeds, and you get more energy out of the process. And at the same time, in the other end, the digestive that you get out is useful for the farmers again, so they can sort of use the nutrients that come out of the potato factory.
That really demonstrates the circular nature of a system like this, that it's not only about utilising waste such as manure and farming runoffs and even food waste, but also circulating nutrients, as you mentioned. And on that note, what other benefits beyond, I guess, reusing waste and other materials can farmers and food producers get out of a system like this?
Well, I think in general, it's for the farmers, it's about maybe becoming a little bit less dependent on inputs from elsewhere. So you're trying to locally create a system that can cope no matter what happens in the big world, because you have everything nearby, and then also in that way you're trying to reduce costs, because you're trying to reduce your dependency of inputs that come from elsewhere, and then also from sort of the food production side, this sort of aligns really well with sustainability goals and reducing your footprint and really trying to reach quite ambitious goals in all of this. So I think also from that perspective, the big food producer is winning on this, because it's really reaching its sustainability goals thanks to this model.
And then thinking about Auckla, who you've been working closely with to create this system and have the bioenergy plant, as you mentioned, why were they so passionate about setting up this system from where they sit?
Well, I think it sort of the driver was the renewable energy, because they knew that they wanted to take the next steps in that process and really be using more renewable energy. So I think that was the starting point. And then also the cost point of things, that if you can find solutions that create some kind of savings at the same time, and may make your sort of production more efficient, of course you try to go for that. And I think that was one big driver in the whole reason why they wanted to get started with this. But then at the same time, it's about collaborating more with your local community. It's about helping other producers in all of this, and creating these sort of shared goals and ambitions together with other food producers. I think that's quite important for them as well. So there are, like, I think the more you work with this, the more benefits you find as well. Maybe in the beginning we didn't quite see all the benefits that come out of this, but the more you work with this, the more comes out of it as well, which is great.
And that highlights such an important point within circular economy and circular solutions like this, the win-win aspect that we've looked at for some time within Invenire. This sounds like such a good demonstration of that. As you mentioned, there is the energy, the use of spent outputs and materials, but then also closer relationships and cost savings.
One thing, Miranda, that I can mention in this is also that to get to that point where you really find the win-win-win situation might take some time, because that's something we realized in this process as well. We knew that we wanted to do something like this, but it took quite a long time before we sort of found the right model for it. And that's something that I think it's so important that you do that you really find that win-win-win situation, because otherwise it won't last. It won't be strong enough, that collaboration. So sometimes it feels like, 2/3 of the process is really to find the win-win-win. And then once you know what it is, the whole implementation of it goes much quicker. But that's one important thing in all of this, that it's no use starting before you are sure that you are on the right track.
And that's another very important point that you make, Patricia, to be searching for the win-win-wins within a solution like this, so that it is viable for the long term and stands up, because everybody is benefiting positively through this system. So thank you so much for chatting. I think it's really great for us to talk about in real terms what an AES, or an agro-ecological symbiosis, is. And we look forward to coming back to this later in the year when the system is up and running.